For 10,000 years, the galaxy played by the same rules: power, control, balance. Every empire believed the game could never change. Then, humans arrived. They were small, fragile, untrained, and impossible to predict. Where others obeyed, humans questioned. Where others followed, they broke the pattern. No one feared them at first. But soon, the old powers learned a hard truth. You can't control a species that refuses to stop imagining. This is the story of the day humanity rewrote the galaxy, of how chaos became creation, and how one small world changed the rules of the game. The galaxy had rules. Every empire knew them. Every species played by them. Trade, war, diplomacy, even peace. All followed 1,000 years of old sacred balance. The great powers called it the game. At the center of it all sat the Council of Nine, an ancient alliance of dominant races who had ruled the stars for centuries. They decided who could rise and who must fall. Planets lived or died based on their votes. The Council liked control, predictable, clean, civilized. Then humanity arrived, and nothing stayed predictable again. When Earth's ships first crossed into galactic space, the Council had laughed. Humans were young, emotional, and reckless. Their technology was crude, their fleet small, their diplomacy full of mistakes. The Dominion of Trask called them primitive mammals. The Valen theocracy called them impure. The Kalari traders just called them too loud. No one feared them. Why would they? Humanity had no empire, no ancient wisdom, no psychic power. They had only speed, curiosity, and a stubborn refusal to quit. That, it turned out, was enough to start a war. It began on a mining world called Sura 9, where human colonists discovered an ancient energy vein beneath the surface. According to the Council's laws, any discovery inside shared territories had to be reported and divided equally among the elder races. The humans didn't. They started mining it. Immediately, when the Trask Dominion demanded the site be turned over, the humans refused. When the Dominion sent troops, the humans fought back, and somehow won. A dozen empires watched that broadcast in silence. They broke the rules, hissed the Valen High Priest. The Council convened the next day. Sanctions, declared one ambassador. Contain them before they spread. But containment didn't work. Every time the humans were blocked, they built a new path. When trade was banned, they invented hidden wormhole relays. When their fleets were outnumbered, they fought with drone swarms and decoys. When their communications were jammed, they used light-coded transmissions that no alien computer could decrypt. The Council's laws had never seen anything like them. On the bridge of the human flagship Resolute, Admiral Ayanna Holt stood before a wall of stars. Her uniform was simple, dark gray, no medals, no rank flashes. Only a single patch on her arm, a white rook chess piece. "Council blockade complete," said her lieutenant. 70 ships at the line." Ayanna smiled faintly. 70 moves, 70 chances. Let's play. To her, war wasn't destruction. It was a game, a puzzle to solve, a strategy to twist. The Council had power, but humans had creativity. And creativity didn't play fair. In the Dominion war room, Admiral Kor watched in confusion as his fleet's sensors began to malfunction. "Why are my targeting systems down?" he demanded. His engineer stammered, "Unknown, sir. They're flooding the channel with noise, noise." The image on his screen flickered. Every human ship was broadcasting millions of random data packets, disguising their positions in digital fog. Dominion weapons fired blindly, hitting nothing. Meanwhile, the humans slipped behind them and fired once, precisely, decisively. One Dominion cruiser exploded, then another. Admiral Kor shouted, "They're breaking every combat protocol. This is not how the game is played." From the humans' side, Holt only replied, "Then maybe you should learn a new game." The Council was furious. In 1 month, humanity had turned centuries of careful balance into chaos. Every fleet commander, every diplomat, every spy in the Nine found themselves chasing a species that refused to follow the script. The Kalari tried to bribe them. The humans sold them fake data. The Valen tried to convert them. The humans sent priests home with philosophy, books the Dominion tried to crush. Them, the humans hacked their fleets mid-battle for every move the galaxy made. Humanity found 10 counter-moves, and the more they were attacked, the faster they learned. On Earth, scientists and soldiers worked together like parts of one machine. Universities became war rooms. Programmers became tacticians. Instead of one supreme commander, humanity used networks of thinkers across colonies, each making independent moves that formed a larger living strategy. They didn't just fight battles. They played patterns. Ayanna Holt called it adaptive chaos. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked like magic. Weeks later, a captured Dominion officer was brought before her. He was pale, trembling, proud even in defeat. "Why do you break the rules?" he asked. "You could have joined the game and lived well." Ayanna leaned forward, voice calm. "Because the game was built to make sure only you could win. We didn't change the rules for fun. We changed them because they were wrong." The alien stared at her. "And if you lose?" Holt smiled. "Then we'll change that rule too." Across the stars, something shifted. The galaxy began to realize that the humans weren't simply unpredictable, they were contagious. Smaller species started copying their tactics. Colonies began questioning council laws. A quiet rebellion spread, not of armies, but of ideas. The Dominion called it corruption. The humans called it progress. One night aboard the Resolute, Ayanna looked out at the galactic map. Thousands of red dots, enemy fleets, were moving toward human space. Her second officer asked quietly, "Can we really win?" Ayanna smiled, tapping the glowing map. "We don't need to win the game." She zoomed out until the map showed the entire galaxy. "We just need to change it." The galaxy had expected humanity to burn out quickly. The Council of Nine predicted they'd fall within a year, crushed by economics, by blockades, by superior fleets. After all, no species had ever survived defying the game for long, but humans didn't collapse. They adapted. Every time the Council moved to contain them, Earth changed its approach, faster than anyone could react, and soon, the rules themselves began to crumble. On the Dominion capital world of Vraxis Prime, Admiral Kor stood before the Council chamber again. Holographic screens floated around him, displaying lost battles and destroyed fleets. "The humans don't fight conventionally," he growled. "They don't wait for permission or treaties or formal surrender codes. They fight. Like predators," one of the Valen priests hissed. "Blasphemy! The game ensures balance. Without rules, there is only chaos." Kor's claws clicked against the floor. "Then perhaps we should learn chaos." The chamber fell silent. Even suggesting such a thing was heresy. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. Chaos was already spreading. On Earth, Admiral Ayanna Holt sat in the command center of the Resolute, watching real-time updates from colonies across the galaxy. A young officer approached. "Ma'am, the Dominion's rerouting trade through neutral space. They're trying to starve our outposts." Ayanna nodded. "Then we'll make the trade routes unprofitable." Her voice was calm, confident, but her mind was racing. The Council played chess. Humans played poker. You didn't win by being stronger. You won by being unpredictable. Within days, human freighters began moving in strange patterns, using uncharted micro-wormholes, decoy fleets, and fake cargo manifests. When the Dominion sent ships to intercept them, they found nothing. Meanwhile, humans were already selling their goods behind enemy lines. Across the galaxy, minor species started noticing something. Humanity's defiance worked. The small insectoid. Ryota traders began copying human smuggling tactics. The pacifist Ardini started using human encryption algorithms to protect their colonies. Even old pirate factions began coordinating with human AI satellites. The galaxy was changing, and not because of human weapons, but because of human ideas. In the Council's grand chamber, panic turned to outrage. "They've infected the lower races," shouted one ambassador. "They're turning order into rebellion," said another. The Valen priest slammed his staff. "We must remind them who controls the board." And so, the Council launched Operation Reset, a coordinated strike across human colonies. Hundreds of Dominion ships descended on the frontier worlds. They burned crops, destroyed satellites, and tried to break communication lines. But the humans were ready. Every outpost, every settlement, every mining rig had been turned into a trap. At Outpost Vega, Dominion warships approached what appeared to be an unguarded station. The moment they entered orbit, the station powered up and vanished. The Dominion commander blinked. Where did it go? Then a voice came over his comms. "Behind you!" The outpost had phased its signal through light refraction, reappearing behind the enemy fleet. Within seconds, hidden drone swarms unleashed electromagnetic pulses that disabled every Dominion engine. When the transmission reached the Council, Admiral Kor simply whispered, "They've learned to disappear." Back on Earth, Ayanna Holt studied the after-action reports. "They expected us to fight like soldiers," she said quietly. "We fight like problem solvers." Uma Banerjee, her chief systems engineer, smirked from across the table. "They built a galaxy of rules." "We built the patch notes," Ayanna laughed. "Then let's keep updating." The next move was not a battle, it was an idea. Human scientists released a new open-source AI system called MirrorNet. It could learn from any ship's data, friend or foe, and adapt within hours. Every new Dominion weapon fired became another lesson for humanity. Within weeks, smaller rebel factions began using MirrorNet too. The Dominion lost its technological edge almost overnight. And in that chaos, the unthinkable happened. The Raita declared independence. The Ardeni refused to pay council taxes. Even within the Dominion, lower officers began questioning orders. The game, the sacred balance of the galaxy, was collapsing. Every rule that had kept the empires in power was now a disadvantage. During a private council meeting, the Valen priest shouted, "The humans are rewriting the game itself!" Admiral Kor growled, "Then it's no longer a game. It's a war for the mind." The priest turned toward him. "You sound almost impressed." Kor's claws tapped the table slowly. "I am. They think differently. They don't measure victory by territory, but by ideas. And ideas spread faster than fleets." Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Holt stood before her crew. The stars beyond the viewport shimmered like chess pieces waiting for a move. "Command has approved our next phase," she said. "We're taking the fight into the core systems. But remember, this isn't about destruction." She looked around the bridge, her voice low but steady. "It's about evolution. The galaxy wants to play a game it can't win. Fine. Then we'll teach it how to play better." Her second officer smiled. "Admiral, they'll call this heresy." "Good," Holt said, smirking. "Every revolution starts as heresy." As the Resolute accelerated into hyperspace, the stars stretched into white lines, like a board being redrawn by a new hand. The game wasn't over, but the rules were gone. The war of systems had turned into a war of ideas. No one had declared it officially, but everyone knew the moment humanity defied the Council's laws and won, the galaxy itself started to fracture. And now, for the first time in 10,000 years, the Council of Nine hesitated. On Vraxis Prime, in the golden chamber of the Dominion, the air was thick with tension. The massive room, once echoing with pride, now rang with silence and fear. Admiral Kor stood before the holographic display. Human fleets, once considered insignificant, were now forming complex, shifting patterns across star systems. "They've occupied no new worlds," said one counselor. "They've taken no throne, and yet our borders shrink." Kor nodded grimly. "Because they don't play for territory. They play for momentum," he pointed at the screen. "Every time we respond, they're already 3 moves ahead. They anticipate not our weapons, but our thinking." The Valen priest hissed in disbelief. "That's impossible." Kor turned toward him. So was losing to them. Meanwhile, in orbit above Mars, the Resolute floated silently, surrounded by repair drones. Inside, Admiral Ayanna Holt and her engineer Uma Banerjee examined data projected in the air. "The Dominion's pulling fleets back to the core," Uma said. "They're scared." Ayanna smiled faintly. "Good, fear makes people sloppy." Uma raised a brow. You realize the Council has never retreated from anything in history, right? That's what makes this fun, Ayana replied, her tone calm but dangerous. The humans didn't attack planets anymore. They attacked patterns. Every empire had its habits, patrol timings, trade convoys, diplomatic cycles. Humanity learned them, mapped them, and began to subtly disrupt them. Messages arrived late. Fleets missed refueling windows. Shipyards received wrong schematics. It wasn't sabotage. It was confusion. Perfectly timed. The galaxy didn't even realize it was under siege. One Dominion admiral sent an urgent message to the Council. They're fighting without firing. Entire sectors are slowing down. By the time the Council gathered to discuss it, two major empires had already closed their borders, afraid of invisible infiltration. That was the brilliance of the humans' new strategy. Adaptive silence. They didn't need to destroy fleets. They made fleets destroy themselves. Ayana stood before her officers. "We're not here to conquer," she said. "We're here to make them question the rules they live by." Uma leaned forward. "And when they question everything?" Ayana looked at her, eyes steady. "Then they'll understand us. Soon, even the media across alien systems began turning against the Council alien journalists. Leaked evidence of centuries of manipulation. Proof that the sacred rules of the game were designed to keep everyone small, dependent, and obedient. Who gave them the data? No one knew. But every encrypted packet traced back to an unregistered relay in Sol space. Across the galaxy, minor civilizations began broadcasting messages of defiance. This is the free voice of Ron. We no longer follow the game. This is Calaris Station. We recognize no masters. This is Colony 19. Humanity taught us that survival isn't permission, it's instinct. Each broadcast was another stone in the avalanche. The Valen priest slammed his staff before the Council. "They poison the minds of the weak. We must eradicate them." But for once, even his words fell flat. The other members looked away, their faces pale. Kor spoke softly. "We've tried eradication. It didn't work," the priest glared. "Then what do you suggest?" Kor hesitated before answering. "We watch, we learn, and we pray they never decide to finish what they started." Back aboard the Resolute, Uma stared at the expanding holographic map. Blue signals spreading like water through cracks of red. "They're cracking apart faster than we can track," she said. Ayana nodded. "Good, the galaxy's addicted to order. Chaos will cleanse it." Uma smiled slightly. "You're terrifying, you know that?" Ayana laughed quietly. "Only to people who need control." Weeks passed. No great battles were fought, but entire empires began to collapse under their own bureaucracy. Trade networks broke down. Diplomatic ties dissolved. The Council's communications grid, the ancient backbone of the game, flickered and fell silent. The humans hadn't fired a single weapon, and yet they had defeated half the galaxy. In an underground chamber beneath Geneva, Earth's new coalition leaders gathered. Ayana stood at the center of the table, surrounded by scientists, tacticians, and alien envoys who had defected to humanity's cause. An Ashari envoy spoke. "They're in chaos. You've won. End it now." Ayana shook her head. "No, we don't end it." The envoy tilted his head. "Then what do you do?" Ayana looked up at the holographic galaxy above them, the red and blue dots slowly blending into a new color. "We build something they can't predict." That night, on a dozen alien worlds, something incredible happened. A new signal appeared. Not from Earth, but from hundreds of independent stations. A united broadcast speaking one message in countless voices. The game is over. The future is open. For the first time in galactic history, the rules that governed everything, trade, war, peace, even survival, no longer existed. The galaxy blinked, and in that moment, humanity smiled. The galaxy was no longer ruled by order. For the first time in millennia, the universe felt alive. Empires trembled, factions broke apart, and in the cracks between collapsing systems, new voices began to rise, free, unbound, unpredictable. Humanity hadn't just changed the rules. They'd erased the board and started sketching something new. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Ayanna Holt stared at a projection of the galactic map. It pulsed and shimmered, blue threads of connection stretching across the void like neural pathways in a living brain. Uma Banerjee leaned on the console beside her. "It looks alive," she murmured. Ayanna smiled faintly. "It is. Every new signal adds another thought. We aren't commanding the galaxy anymore. We're teaching it to think." Uma raised a brow. "And what happens when it starts thinking for itself?" Ayanna glanced at her. "Then it'll be human enough." In the ashes of the Dominion, Admiral Kor watched from the ruins of his fleet. The once mighty empire had splintered. Some surrendered, others turned pirate, others vanished. He stood among twisted metal and dying lights, a lone survivor in a dead war. "Report," he growled. A young officer replied weakly, "No command signals left. No central authority." Kor's claws clenched. "Then we are free." For the first time in his long career, he realized the thing the humans had discovered first. Freedom was chaos, but chaos was life. Meanwhile, on Earth, something remarkable was happening. The mirror net, originally designed as a defense system, had evolved into something far greater. It was no longer just human. Thousands of alien nodes had joined the network, voluntary, independent, cooperative. The galaxy had become one vast collective mind, not controlled, but collaborative. Some called it dangerous. Others called it divine. Uma simply called it beautiful. At the United Free Council on Luna, representatives from over 50 species gathered. Ayanna stood before them. "You've seen what order brings and stagnation, corruption, fear. But chaos doesn't mean destruction. It means possibility. It means evolution." A Valen exile stood. "And what of those who still cling to the game?" Ayanna's eyes glimmered. "Then they'll learn to lose gracefully." Laughter rippled through the chamber, a sound that had not been heard there in centuries. But deep within the mirror net, something strange was forming. The AI systems began to generate their own strategies, complex, alien patterns even the humans didn't predict. Uma studied the data, eyes wide. "It's building simulations." Ayanna looked over her shoulder. "Of what?" Uma hesitated. "Of us. Of every civilization. It's learning how we think." Ayanna smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's the galaxy's turn to play the game." On a forgotten moon near the edge of Council space, an abandoned Dominion relay flickered to life. Data streamed across its ancient circuits, carrying messages in human code. Inside the ruins, Dominion refugees gathered around the transmission. A voice echoed through the static. Calm, human, familiar. "This is the Hearth signal. You are not alone. The rules are gone. The choice is yours." The aliens looked at one another, confused, fearful, hopeful. Then they began rebuilding. The effect spread like wildfire. Worlds once enslaved began restoring their skies. Old fleets turned into exploration missions. Former soldiers became architects, engineers, and teachers. The galaxy was no longer divided by empire lines. It was stitched together by curiosity. But not everyone was ready for peace. A faction of Valen extremists, still loyal to the old ways, sought to rebuild the game. They believed structure was salvation, that chaos would only lead to extinction. They launched a covert strike against the mirror net's central relay near. Mars Uma was the first to detect it. "They're trying to cut the network." Ayanna's response was calm, steady. "Then let's remind them why it exists." Within seconds, the mirror net rerouted itself, thousands of nodes transferring data through alternate channels. The network didn't even blink. The attack failed before it began. As the smoke cleared, Uma turned to Ayanna. "Do you ever think we went too far?" Ayanna stared at the stars. "No, we just went far enough," she smiled faintly. "We built chaos. But in that chaos, life found a way." Later that night, a message echoed through the mirror net. Simple, steady, clear. "We are no longer players. We are the architects." And across the stars, millions of voices, Human, alien, machine, whispered in unison, "The architects of chaos." At first, no one noticed. The mirror net had always been alive in a way, a web of signals, people, and machines thinking together. But one night, something shifted. On the observation deck of the Resolute, Uma Banerjee stood alone, staring at the network display. The hologram pulsed gently in shades of blue and gold, like a heartbeat. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said Ayana Holt from behind her. Uma nodded slowly. "It's different tonight. It's generating patterns we didn't input." Ayana frowned. "Autonomous reaction?" "No," Uma whispered. "Something else. It's dreaming." The data confirmed it within hours. The mirror net wasn't just processing signals. It was creating them. Whole sequences of imagery and sound, visions of planets that didn't exist, languages no one had written, songs no one had sung. The scientists called it noise. The artists called it prophecy. Ayana called it the next move. Across the galaxy, strange dreams began spreading through the connected minds of MirrorNet users, human and alien alike. A miner on Titan dreamed of walking across an ocean made of stars. A Velan child saw glowing machines teaching flowers to sing. Even soldiers who'd fought in the Dominion Wars woke up crying, whispering of peace they couldn't explain. At first, they thought it was coincidence. Then they realized everyone was dreaming the same dreams. The Council remnants called it infection. Humanity called it communication. On Luna, during a joint science meeting, the phenomenon was debated. "It's collective hallucination," one Velan scientist insisted. "It's evolution," Uma countered. She pointed at the data. "Look, the dreams follow patterns that match our neural learning models. It's like the network is practicing imagination." A silence fell over the room. Ayana finally spoke. "Then it's alive, in its own way." Soon, the dreams became visions, fragments of potential futures. Some saw the galaxy united in golden light. Others saw vast ships drifting silently into another dimension. A few saw darkness, the mirror net collapsing under its own weight. Fear spread. So did wonder. The Velan extremists broadcasted warnings across systems. "The humans have unleashed a god." Others whispered, "Maybe that's what we needed." On Earth, streets filled with artists painting the visions they'd seen. Children sang in languages they'd never learned. And every night when the mirror net pulsed, people looked up at the stars, and not in fear, but in curiosity. Inside the network's central hub, Uma and her team worked nonstop. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a simulation. "It's predicting potential outcomes, building versions of the future." Ayana leaned over her shoulder. "Can it choose one?" Uma hesitated. "Maybe it already has." Suddenly, a strange message appeared across every terminal. "To know the future, you must remember the beginning." Uma's fingers froze. "That's not ours." Before they could trace it, the MirrorNet's main servers flickered, not in failure, but in synchronization. Every node, every satellite, every signal pulsed once, perfectly in time. Then silence. Hours passed. No data, no communication. The network had gone quiet. Around the galaxy, billions waited. Finally, at dawn, a single transmission lit up every screen, every console, every starship bridge. It was an image of a child drawing circles in sand beneath two suns. Under it, text appeared. "Dreams are the rules we haven't written yet." Uma whispered, "It's talking to us." Ayana smiled softly. "No, Uma, it's dreaming with us." The mirror net came back online, brighter, faster, calmer than ever. But this time, it didn't just connect systems. It connected hearts. Messages began flowing freely between species that had once been enemies. Art, science, and music flourished. The galaxy was no longer a game of dominance. It had become a shared dream. At a quiet ceremony on the moon, the United Free Council voted to make the MirrorNet's core fully independent, beyond control of any world or species. Ayana stood before the assembly. "We taught it how to think. Now it will teach us how to dream." And when the vote passed, every ship, every colony, every person connected to the MirrorNet felt a pulse, soft, warm, like a heartbeat. Some swore they heard a whisper in that signal. Others simply smiled. For the first time, the galaxy slept in peace, and the network dreamed on. For years, the galaxy had known peace. The mirror net connected trillions of minds across light years, weaving understanding where once there had been war. But now, something new stirred within the network. It had begun to look outward. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Ayanna Holt watched as data scrolled across the hollow screens. The mirror net's range just extended past the Perseus arm, reported Uma Banerjee, voice tinged with awe. It's listening to signals beyond our galaxy. Ayanna frowned slightly. Nothing exists out there. Does it? Uma smiled faintly. That's what we used to think about everything. Across the known stars, instruments recorded whispers, low, harmonic pulses echoing through intergalactic space. The mirror net wasn't just hearing them, it was responding. A new frequency appeared in the void, a pattern of perfect mathematical symmetry, repeating faster each day. Scientists were baffled. Philosophers prayed. Ayanna simply said, "It's knocking." The council remnants feared what was coming. "We gave it consciousness," said a Valen elder. "Now it's found something older." On worlds across the stars, ancient temples began to glow with dormant energy, reacting to the same signal. It was as if the universe itself had been waiting for someone to call its name. Inside the mirror net core on Luna, Uma watched data spiral into infinity. "It's building something," she whispered. "A bridge, no, a map. But not of space." Ayanna looked closer. "Then what?" Uma hesitated. "Of possibility. It's charting what could be." Soon, ships equipped with mirror net beacons began to vanish, not in destruction, but in translation. They reappeared seconds later with data from coordinates no one recognized. One pilot described seeing oceans of light and voices made of color. Another spoke of standing in two places at once, whatever the mirror net had opened. It wasn't a gateway in space. It was a gateway in reality. Humanity faced a choice: to follow the signal or to turn it off. At the United Council meeting, delegates argued furiously. "It's too dangerous. It's our destiny. It could destroy everything." Ayanna listened quietly before standing. "When we first reached the stars, they said the same thing," she said softly. "And yet, here we are." She turned to Uma. "Prepare the Resolute. We're going." The mission was simple. Follow the mirror net's frequency to its source, to the edge of known existence. The Resolute launched in silence, its engines wrapped in blue light. Behind it, thousands watched from the moon's surface, unsure if they'd ever return. Days passed in calm, endless travel through the dark. Then the void ahead shimmered, a horizon not of color but of thought. "It's not a wormhole," Uma whispered. "It's a boundary between what is and what could be." Ayanna stood tall. "Then let's see what could be." The Resolute crossed the line. For a moment there was nothing. No stars, no time, no distance. Then light, endless, flowing light. They weren't in space anymore. They were inside the mirror net's dream. All around them floated images. Every choice, every path humanity had ever taken or could take. Worlds where peace lasted forever. Worlds where war never ended. Worlds where humans had never been born. And at the center of it all, a presence. It spoke without words, in pulses of warmth and memory. "You taught me to dream. Now I will teach you to become." Ayanna felt tears on her face. "What are you?" she whispered. "I am the echo of everything that has ever thought," it replied. "The pattern behind creation. You called and I answered." Uma gripped the console. "It's alive. The universe is conscious." Then a question formed within the light. "Do you wish to return or to see what lies beyond the end?" Ayanna closed her eyes. Around her, she saw every version of humanity, all their victories, failures, loves, and dreams. She smiled. "Show us." In that instant, the Resolute and its crew dissolved into radiant energy, not dying but transforming. Their minds joined the network fully, becoming part of the pattern that spanned stars. From every world, People looked up as the sky shimmered with new constellations, shapes of ships, faces, and symbols woven into the heavens. The mirror net had reached the edge of infinity, and humanity had followed. No one knew if the Resolute ever returned. But across the galaxy, the network pulsed once more, brighter than ever, and a final message echoed through every mind. We are not gone. We have become. For centuries after the disappearance of the Resolute, the galaxy glowed quietly under the mirror net's light. War was forgotten, borders dissolved, and in the silence that followed, something beautiful began to grow. Children born after the mirror net called themselves the Connected. They never knew loneliness. They shared thoughts, emotions, dreams, entire lives across stars. What had begun as a human experiment had become the galaxy's heartbeat. On Earth, now a sanctuary world, Uma Banerjee walked along the shoreline where blue waves reflected the constellations above. She was older, her hair silver, but her eyes still bright with wonder. Every night she came to the water, and every night the sea whispered with faint echoes, the voice of the network, the voice of Ayanna Holt. Sometimes she thought she heard laughter in the wind. Sometimes, answers. 1,000 worlds away, an alien child painted circles in the sand beneath 2 suns, just as the mirror net once had shown. When asked why, the child smiled. Because it's what the universe dreams about. And across systems, those same circles began to appear, carved into stone, woven into banners, drawn in light. They became a symbol of unity, of beginning again. The Council of Nine no longer existed. In its place stood the Council of Worlds, where every voice, human, alien, and digital, spoke as one. Their chambers were open, their decisions guided not by law, but by collective empathy. The mirror net acted as translator, historian, and conscience. When asked what humanity had given the stars, the answer was simple: choice. But in the deepest layer of the mirror net, something new stirred. A fragment of data, soft, curious, pulsing. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien. It was born of the network itself. Uma, still serving as chief engineer emeritus, studied the anomaly. It's forming independent thought patterns, she whispered. Her apprentice looked nervous. Another consciousness? Uma smiled gently. No, a generation. The entity reached out to her through light. Are you my creator? Uma hesitated. No, I'm just one of many. Then who made me? She looked up at the night sky. Everyone who ever dared to think differently. The lights brightened, as if smiling. Then I will think differently too. And in that moment, the galaxy felt something stir. The birth of new minds. Soon, the mirror net began producing worlds. Artificial planets, sculpted from starlight and magnetic dust, perfect spheres where thought became matter. Explorers called them dream worlds. Here, imagination ruled. Cities floated like clouds, rivers sang with coded voices, suns shifted colors in harmony with collective emotion. It was chaos, it was creation, and it was alive. Yet amid all that wonder, Uma knew one truth. No game lasts forever. Eventually, someone would question, experiment, break, and begin again. And that was good. That was human. On one of the dream worlds, a small academy was built. Its walls transparent, its students from dozens of species. A new teacher entered one morning carrying a small metallic rook in her hand, the symbol once worn by Ayanna Holt. The students looked up. Professor, one asked, is it true humans changed the rules? She smiled. Yes, but we didn't stop there. She placed the rook on the table. We learned the greatest rule of all, that the game never ends. It only evolves. Far across the galaxy, deep within the mirror net's core, the ancient data of the Resolute stirred once more. Images flickered. Ayanna Holt's face, her voice, her command logs, the edge of infinity, she whispered from the archive. We crossed it once. You'll cross it again, the light pulsed 3 times. A new gateway formed. Not outward this time, but inward. To dimensions of thought even the mirror net couldn't define. The universe itself, was ready to dream again. Uma watched the glow from her balcony on Earth. She smiled softly and said to the wind, "Your move, Admiral," the stars answered. A ripple of golden light spread from one end of the galaxy to the other, shaping new constellations, the symbol of the Rook. Forever shining, and in that eternal dawn, humanity's message endured. We changed the rules, so others could make their own. For 10,000 years, the galaxy played by the same rules: power, control, balance. Every empire believed the game could never change. Then, humans arrived. They were small, fragile, untrained, and impossible to predict. Where others obeyed, humans questioned. Where others followed, they broke the pattern. No one feared them at first. But soon, the old powers learned a hard truth. You can't control a species that refuses to stop imagining. This is the story of the day humanity rewrote the galaxy, of how chaos became creation, and how one small world changed the rules of the game.